I've been at the cabin on Lake Superior for 4 days with my granddaughter, Clara. She's 10 now, and I've been teaching her the same lessons my grandfather taught me over 60 years ago. The patience of lure casting, the thrill of a tight line, the peace of the early morning water. We had our routine. 5 a.m. sharp on the weathered dock, thermos's thick black coffee for me, spiced apple cider for her watching the cold mist burn off the water. We pulled in 7 smallmouth bass and 1 magnificent, thick-bellied lake trout. Clara was already planning how she'd show the photos to her mother, beaming about the trout's colors. Subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments which country you're watching from. Let's see. I built that cabin myself back in the fall of 2001. It took me 3 solid summers working weekends and every day of my vacation. Every shingle I laid, every piece of cedar siding I nailed, it was all done right, using the best materials. That's what I do. Why I did. I was a certified structural engineer and general contractor for 46 years before I finally retired 2 springs ago. I started hauling cinder blocks when I was 16. I worked my way up, put myself through night school, and eventually ran my own firm, Stratton Associates. We built high-rises and community centers all across the province. So, when I pulled into the paved driveway of my home on Thursday afternoon and saw the industrial-grade, 8-yard disposal been sitting squarely on my front lawn, my entire body went rigid. The house I'd lived in for 27 years. The house I'd bought after my first wife, Margaret, passed from a sudden illness. The house where I'd raised my daughter, Sarah. The house I'd eventually shared with Amelia after we married 8 years ago. My house. I eased the truck to a stop. Clara was still chattering away about the lake trout, asking if we could mount the pictures in her room. I barely heard her. The garage door was up, which was odd. It was always down. And the front door, it was hanging slightly ajar. I could hear a loud, abrasive noise from inside, the high-pitched whine of a reciprocating saw, followed by the heavy, rhythmic thud of a sledgehammer. I got out of the truck, the gravel crunching under my boots. I told Clara to stay put. My chest felt like it was encased in concrete. I walked slowly through the open garage door, past my organized workbench, and into the house. I stopped dead in the hallway. There was construction dust everywhere. It coated the mahogany floors, settled on the framed photographs, and covered the expensive, imported Persian rug Amelia insisted on. Drop cloths covered the living room, furniture haphazardly. 2 men, neither of whom I recognized, were tearing down the wall between my private study where I kept my blueprints and my files and the adjacent guest bedroom. The wall that separated my quiet, controlled space from the rest of the main floor. They'd already removed half of it. I could see directly through to the custom built-in bookshelves on the other side. What the hell is going on here? My voice was low, but it cut through the noise. One of the men, younger, wearing a cheap, stained high-vis vest, looked up, startled, dropping a piece of drywall. "Oh, hey, are you the property manager? We need more 6-inch framing nails." "I am the homeowner," I stated, my tone colder than the water we've been fishing in. "Who are you, and what, precisely, are you doing to my house?" "Renovation project," the older contractor replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "We're opening up this whole section, adding a sliding partition, converting this side into a proper media streaming facility. Got to get the acoustics right. A media streaming facility." That's when a new presence appeared from what used to be the guest room. It was Leo, my stepson, 30 years old, wearing a brand new, oversized branded hoodie that probably cost more than my monthly property tax bill. Designer athletic sneakers, the size of small boats, and of course his phone held vertically in his hand. Always the phone. "Oh, Bernard," Leo said, not looking up from his screen. He used my first name with a familiar, casual disregard that always grated on me. "You're back early. Mom said you were gone until Saturday." I kept my voice level. 46 years in the business taught me that the moment you lose your temper on a site, you lose control. "Leo, what is this?" "Upgrade," he replied, gesturing around with his phone as if he were showing off his own recently purchased condo. "This house is stuck in the early 2000s. It looks like a museum." "Bernard, I need a professional space for my new channel. The echo in the basement is terrible, and the Wi-Fi down there is inconsistent. I turned to the contractors. Stop working. Right now. Hey, we got a timeline here, the young one complained. I don't care about your timeline. This is my house. Stop working, or I'm calling the police and the building inspector. You will be fined into bankruptcy. They exchanged nervous glances, then slowly put down their tools. They knew the language of consequences. Leo finally looked up from his screen, a look of bored irritation on his face. Relax, dude. Amelia approved this. It's our house. It's family. Our house. I walked past him to the kitchen counter, where I'd left my correspondence before the trip. My most recent high-limit platinum credit card statement was sitting there, opened. I picked it up. There was a single charge on it, $21,580. It was dated 3 days ago, while I was fly fishing with Clara. The details listed: structural lumber, custom soundproofing insulation, specialized electrical wiring, and contractor deposit. Did you use my credit card? I asked. Mom gave it to me, he said, waving a hand dismissively. We're family. What's the big deal? It's going in a house, right? It's an investment. I stared at him. This 30-year-old man who'd quit 3 entry-level jobs in the last year, who'd been building his streaming presence for 4 years, who'd moved into my house 3 years ago because he needed to save money for his business. The man Amelia defended every time I gently suggested he contribute something, be it labor or money, to the household. The big deal, I said quietly, the cold radiating from my voice, is that this is my house. My name is the only name on the deed. And you just committed felony credit card fraud. Fraud? That's dramatic. He laughed, a shallow, high-pitched sound. It's a family expense. Did I authorize this charge? Amelia did. Amelia is not an authorized user on this specific credit card account. She does not have power of attorney over my finances. He shifted his weight uncomfortably. Look, Bernard, she said it would be fine. You're loaded. You're retired. What else are you spending it on? Boats. I pulled out my phone, the phone I rarely used, and called Amelia. She answered on the second ring. Hey, honey, are you home? How was the fishing? Amelia, did you authorize Leo to use my platinum credit card to hire contractors? A beat of silence. He told me he needed to elevate his workspace. He's trying to grow his platform, Bernard. We need to support him. He said he was going to turn that old study into a really professional studio. Did you tell him he could charge $21,500 to my card? I didn't think about the exact amount. He said he'd keep it reasonable. 21,000 is not reasonable. And did you tell him he could tear down a wall in my house? Another pause. He said he needed more space. The layout felt restrictive. Why are you being so difficult about this? Difficult? I had paid every mortgage payment on this house for 27 years. I had replaced the furnace and the air conditioning units in 2015. I had reinforced the foundation when Amelia moved in. I had built the 3-tiered deck out back where we held our summer parties. I had fixed every leak, painted every wall, maintained every system with the professional precision of an engineer. And I was being difficult. Amelia, I will talk to you when you get home. What time are you done work? I'm leaving now. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I hung up and looked at the 2 contractors. Who hired you? The older contractor pulled out his phone and showed me a text message chain. Leo's number. This guy said his mother wanted an urgent renovation done. Paid us a $3,000 cash deposit. Do you have permits for this work? They exchanged looks. He said he'd handle the permits. Said it was just an internal, cosmetic change. Of course he did. I pulled out my own phone and began taking photos. The dust, the disposal bin, the demolished wall. Then I walked closer and looked at the raw framing they'd exposed. My stomach dropped. I leaned in, tracing the heavy header beam running above the opening they'd made. That's a load-bearing wall, I stated flatly. The younger contractor's face went white. What? The younger contractor stammered, his eyes wide as he looked at the exposed framework. That wall? The kid said it was just a partition. The kid knows absolutely nothing about construction. I corrected him, pointing precisely to where the floor joist from the second story rested on the framing below and how the original support studs were anchored into the foundation slab. This is a key load-bearing wall. It supports the entire central ceiling diaphragm and the roof structure above the living room. You cannot just remove it without immediately installing a proper engineered steel beam and substantial vertical supports. I looked up at the ceiling drywall in the hallway. Already, I could see a subtle, almost imperceptible $frac, one $4-inch sag directly above the exposed section. The house was already moving. You need to stop immediately, I commanded. This is structurally dangerous. It's an imminent collapse hazard. We can install a beam. The older contractor, who seemed to have a faint understanding of the gravity, offered nervously. Not without a structural engineer's signed assessment and stamp plans, and certainly not without an emergency permit from the city, I countered. This is illegal, unpermitted work that has compromised the integrity of my property. You are responsible for the damage you've caused. Leo, who had been listening from the doorway, finally lowered his phone, his face twisted in disbelief. Oh my God, Bernard, you're being so extra about this. It's a little hole. It's fine. We'll figure it out later. I turned and looked at him, really looked at him. This entitled, 30-year-old man who had never built anything in his entire life, whose only sense of structure came from the flimsy, temporary views on his screen, who thought creating short videos was an equivalent to a real career. This man had just put my 27-year-old home in structural danger because he wanted better acoustics and lighting for his so-called streaming facility. Everyone out, I said. The quiet authority in my voice was absolute. It was the tone I used when I had to shut down an unsafe construction site. Now, collect your tools and leave. You can't just dash, Leo started, gesturing wildly. This is my house, my property. I cut him off, stepping closer until I towered over him. You have commissioned unpermitted, illegal work that has compromised the structural integrity of this building. I am the sole homeowner, and I'm telling you to leave immediately, or I am calling both the municipal building inspector and the regional police. I will file reports for illegal construction and trespassing. The contractors started frantically packing up their tools. They recognized the authority of an engineer who knew the building code better than the inspectors themselves. They knew they were exposed. Leo pulled out his phone again, the screen light reflecting off his angry face, and started filming me. Wow. So, my stepdad is literally kicking out licensed professionals I hired to improve his house. This is financial abuse, guys. This is what happens when dash. Turn that camera off. Now, you are filming me, a private citizen, inside my private residence without my explicit, ongoing consent. It's my content. I can film wherever I want. I'm in the hallway. This is my house, Leo. And in this province, the law is clear. You need the consent of every party to record a private conversation or a private space. Turn it off, or I will add that to the official charges of fraud and property damage. He slowly lowered the phone, his face bright red, simmering with a rage born of thwarted entitlement. Amelia is going to hear all about this. She's on her way. Good. I look forward to that discussion. The contractors loaded their truck with a haste that suggested professional fear. The older man quickly shoved a damp business card into my hand. Look, Mr. Stratton, we honestly didn't know. The kid was convincing. If you need this finished properly structurally, give me a call. We'll do it to code. I took the card, waited until the disposal bin truck had been called to haul away the massive container from my lawn, and watched the contractor's pickup disappear down the street. Then I stood alone in the hallway, surveying the damage. 46 years as a structural engineer and general contractor. I'd seen this before dozens of times. Homeowners hiring cheap labor, skipping permits, making structural changes without the faintest understanding of the physics involved. Half the renovation disasters I'd been called to fix for insurance companies started exactly like this. But this was my home, the one I had maintained meticulously, the one I had kept safe and sound through brutal Canadian winters and scorching summers. And in 3 days, Leo had turned a valuable asset into a catastrophic code violation. I pulled out my phone and meticulously documented everything. Photos of the demolished wall, the exposed ceiling joists, the haphazard electrical wires hanging loose, the visible $frac, $1 sag in the hallway drywall, the lack of proper support where the key structural elements had been cut. Every single violation I could identify, I photographed and time-stamped. Then I walked to the study, or what was left of it, and went to my secured, fireproof filing cabinet. I keep everything organized. Always have. It's the nature of the business. Every structure starts with documentation. I found exactly what I needed. 1. The original building plans, which I had drawn up myself in 2001, showing every column, every footing, and every wall, clearly marking the load-bearing elements with a standard structural engineering symbol $\sigma$. 2. The official building permit from when I built the three-car garage addition in 2006. 3. The property deed. Bernard Michael Stratton. Sole and exclusive owner. 4. The Platinum credit card statement showing Leo's unauthorized charge of $21,580. I spread the documents out on my sturdy, mahogany desk piece I had also built and took more comprehensive, high-resolution photos of the documentation. Then I called my lawyer, Mark. He wasn't just my corporate lawyer. He was an old friend from the construction association. I'd built his lakefront retirement home 6 years prior. Mark, it's Bernard. I need immediate advice on something that is rapidly escalating from a domestic issue to a criminal liability. I explained the situation, the unauthorized charges, the illegal renovation, the severe structural damage caused by Leo's ignorance. That is remarkably straightforward, Bernard, Mark said, his voice calm and professional. Unauthorized use of a high-limit credit card is financial fraud. Trespassing and criminal property damage, particularly when it compromises safety, are serious charges. Do you want to press charges? I want options first, Mark. I need to speak to my wife. Understood. But Bernard, document everything. And I mean everything. Photos, detailed reports of the structural integrity issues. Save every text message. And record conversations if your local law allows for one-party consent, which, in this jurisdiction, it does. If this goes south, you need an ironclad case. Already on it, Mark. You know me. Good man. Call me first thing tomorrow morning and let me know the instruction. I heard Amelia's luxury sedan screech into the driveway. She was home. I quickly gathered my documents, placed them in my briefcase, and met her at the kitchen door. She walked in looking defensive, her face tight. Leo called me. He said you literally yelled at him and chased him out, humiliating him in front of his contractors. Amelia, come look at this. I led her directly to the demolished wall in the hallway. She stopped abruptly when she saw the extent of the damage and the exposed materials. Bernard, what happened to the wall? He said he was just making a doorway. Leo hired unlicensed contractors to tear it down without permits. That is a primary structural load-bearing wall that supports the second story. I explained, pointing to the $frac $4 sag above. Do you see the ceiling moving there? That's because the load is now being transferred through unreinforced portions of the frame. This could cause serious, catastrophic structural failure, possibly even a collapse. She bit her lip, her eyes darting between the hole and my face. He said he was just opening up the space, making it more contemporary. I pulled out the photograph of the original blueprint from my phone and zoomed in on the structural legend. See this symbol, $\sigma$. That's the engineering symbol for a primary load-bearing element. You cannot simply remove it. Can't you just fix it? You're a builder, Bernard. Not without an immediate structural engineer's assessment, a full municipal emergency permit, and a minimum of $30,000 in specialized materials and emergency labor. Amelia, this isn't about me being difficult. This is about Leo making dangerous, illegal, and destructive changes to my property without my knowledge or consent, putting the entire asset at risk. I showed her the credit card statement next. He charged over $21,000 to my personal card without asking me, or even consulting the account owner. He's my son, Bernard. He made a mistake. He's trying to build a career. He is 30 years old. When does a mistake become a deliberate, adult choice with significant legal and financial consequences? This is not a spilled glass of water. She looked at the demolished wall, then at the financial documents in my hand, then finally at my determined face. What do you want me to do? I wanted to take responsibility. I wanted to pay back the $21,580 he stole. And yes, legally, Amelia, that is the definition of theft and fraud. He didn't steal. You're being melodramatic. Unauthorized use of a credit card is fraud. Amelia. Legally, that's what it is. And I want him to pay for the repairs, to fix this properly, to code, and to restore the structural integrity. The minimum estimated cost is now closer to $30,000, possibly more. He doesn't have that kind of money, Bernard. You know that. Then he shouldn't have spent it or commissioned this illegal work. The consequence of his ambition is now financial liability. Leo, apparently having changed his mind about leaving, appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, his arms crossed. So what? You're going to sue me? Your own stepson? Great family values, Bernard. I looked directly at Leo, ignoring the attempt at condescension in his voice. Leo, I have been patient with you for 8 years. Since the day I married your mother, I have allowed you to live here completely rent-free. I have paid for your food, your utilities, the extremely fast internet connection you require for your business, and your premium streaming subscriptions. I have quietly listened to Amelia constantly defend your career as a content creator. I paused, allowing the weight of my past generosity to settle in the tense silence. I have watched you sleep until noon, play video games until 3 a.m., and contribute exactly nothing to the financial or physical maintenance of this household. And now, you have not only committed financial fraud, but have also caused catastrophic damage to my federally registered private property. So yes, I am going to hold you accountable. This is such dash, Leo started again, throwing his hands up in theatrical exasperation. Amelia, I cut him off, turning my gaze to her. Are you going to let him continue to speak to me, your husband, with this level of open disrespect inside my own home? Amelia looked between us, her face a road map of internal struggle. I saw the conflict, the pull of her biological son versus the reality of her marriage and the financial security I provided. Leo, honey, maybe you should apologize for the mess. Apologize for what? Trying to modernize this ancient, dusty house? For wanting a decent setup to support myself? For stealing, I said quietly, firmly. For causing structural property damage. For endangering the structural integrity of my home. The building itself. He scoffed, adjusting his expensive hoodie. Whatever, Boomer. This is why your daughter, Sarah, barely visits anymore. She knows how restrictive you are. The room went completely silent. Sarah, my daughter from my first marriage to Margaret. She was a research professor in Toronto now. We talked every week, and she did visit rarely not because of me, but because of the palpable tension created by Amelia's overprotection of Leo, and because Leo had borrowed an amount approaching $5,000 from her 3 years ago and never paid it back. An amount Sarah never pressed for because she hated confrontation. Amelia's face flushed a deep crimson, not with shame for her son's actions, but with anger at his cruelty. Leo, that is enough. Do not bring Sarah into this. No, I interjected, stepping forward. Let him say what he wants. Let's get everything out in the open, Leo. Say it all. Leo, seeing an opening for drama, immediately pulled out his phone again, holding it high. You know what? My followers are going to love this. Entitled Boomer kicks out his own stepson for trying to make something of himself, while living in a house that's probably worth a fortune. $1.6 million. I corrected him, using the precise figure from the last appraisal I ordered when updating my insurance policy. And it's worth that much because I built it to high, professional standards, and I have maintained it immaculately for 27 years, a period during which you have contributed less than the cost of a garden hose. Exactly. You got all this wealth, and you won't help me build my brand. You won't invest in my future. Your brand? I almost chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. Leo, you have 49,000 followers. Do you know how many of them will still be there in 5 years? Do you know how many content creators with that following actually earn a legitimate living wage? You're 30 years old. You need a real, sustainable career. This is my real career, Bernard. You're just old-fashioned. Then treat it like one. Get business insurance. File proper tax declarations. Create a sustainable 5-year business plan that doesn't involve defrauding your stepfather and demolishing structural components of his house. Stop living off your mother and me. Amelia stepped quickly between us, placing a restraining hand on my arm. Both of you stop. This isn't helping anyone. We are a family. I looked down at my wife, the woman I had married, thinking she shared my values of responsibility and honesty, the woman I had planned to spend my structured, peaceful retirement with. Amelia, I need to know this clearly. Are you going to support your son breaking the law and causing significant damage to our primary asset and home, or are you going to acknowledge that what he did was fundamentally and legally wrong? He's my son, she whispered, repeating the same insufficient defense. That is not an answer. He made a mistake. He's young. He will pay you back. With what money? He hasn't had a verifiable employment income in 2 years. He's building his channel. 49,000 followers in 4 years, Amelia. That's approximately 12,000 per year. As a professional, I know what the average content creator with that following makes. Maybe a few $100s a month if they get a good sponsorship. That is a hobby, not a career, and it certainly does not cover $30,000 in emergency structural repairs. Leo's face was now past red. It was the color of a bruised plum. You don't know anything about social media? You're just a washed-up contractor who's jealous that I'm doing something modern. Modern doesn't pay for structural engineers, Leo. Modern doesn't erase financial fraud. And modern doesn't magically fix catastrophic code violations. Are you actually going to press criminal charges against my son? Amelia's voice was high-pitched and shaking. I'm going to give him a choice, I stated, my eyes fixed on Leo. He can either agree, in writing, to pay back the $21,580 he stole, plus the full cost of all structural repairs which, with the emergency engineering and permitting, will likely be close to $32,000, or I will immediately report the fraud and the severe property damage to the regional police, the credit card company's fraud division, and the municipal building inspector's office. That's not a choice. Amelia cried out. He doesn't have $53,000. Then he should have considered that before he demolished a load-bearing wall in my house and committed fraud against me. Leo grabbed his car keys and his phone charger, his actions jerky and furious. I'm out of here. This environment is toxic. It's emotionally abusive. Where are you going, Leo? Amelia asked, her voice sounding desperate now. To Chris's house. At least his parents actually support his hustle. They bought him a whole streaming rig. He stormed out of the kitchen. I heard his engine start, the tires briefly squealing as he backed out of the driveway, far too fast, a final act of destructive disrespect. Amelia stood there, rigid, her arms crossed tightly. I truly cannot believe you are doing this, Bernard. Doing what, Amelia? Protecting my property? Upholding the law? Enforcing consequences for a deliberate crime? Choosing your pride and your finances over my son's future. He will get a criminal record. Amelia, this is not about my pride. I am an engineer. If that wall fails, the roof could collapse, injuring someone or destroying everything. This is about structural safety and accountability. And it's about Leo learning that actions have profound consequences. He is 30. She snatched her purse off the counter. I'm going to Chris's too. Leo shouldn't be alone right now. He's fragile. Amelia, I'll be back later. We will talk when everyone has calmed down and the structural damage has been assessed. She left without another word. I stood in the gutted hallway, surrounded by plaster dust and broken remnants of lumber, and felt the immense weight of 4 decades of building things settle on my shoulders. I had engineered high-rises, built businesses, raised a family, and thought I had built a new future with Amelia. But I knew, with a certainty I could not ignore, that you cannot build anything lasting on a foundation that will not support the structure. I pulled out my phone. First, I called the credit card company and reported the fraud. They immediately froze the card, opened an investigation into the $21,000 charges, and promised to send me official documentation for the police. Next, I called the municipal building inspector's office and reported the severe, illegal structural work. They confirmed they would send an officer out first thing in the morning for an emergency assessment. Finally, I called Mark, my lawyer, back. Mark, I want to press charges, and I want an immediate restraining order keeping Leo away from my property until the repairs are done and the criminal investigation is complete. Understood, Bernard. I'll draft the paperwork tonight. You can pick it up tomorrow morning for filing. I spent the rest of the evening covering the demolished opening with thick plywood sheets, a temporary barrier against the elements, and to keep the heat in. I also meticulously cleaned the dust and made a detailed, itemized list of every material and labor hour required to restore the structural integrity. By the time Amelia came home around 10 p.m., I had a precise plan of action. She came in quietly, avoided eye contact, and sat down at the kitchen table, the one I had custom-made from reclaimed solid oak 15 years ago. He's staying at Chris's place for a few days, she announced. Okay, Bernard, can we talk now? I sat opposite her. I reported the fraud to the credit card company and the police. I have secured an emergency assessment appointment with a structural engineer for tomorrow morning. And I have instructed Mark to file for a restraining order to legally keep Leo away from his property. Her face went visibly pale. A restraining order against my son, Bernard? He's 30 years old. You'll ruin him. He committed multiple crimes, Amelia. Financial fraud, property damage, illegal structural alteration that qualifies as gross negligence. If I do not handle this properly, I could be legally liable if the structure fails and someone is injured. You married an engineer. I deal with facts and legal obligations, not sentimentality. You are treating him like a hardened criminal. You just want to follow his dreams. He committed fraud. That makes him a criminal in the eyes of the law. He is 30 years old. He made adult choices. He faces adult consequences. You are asking me to choose between you and my son. Her voice was quiet, desperate. No, Amelia, I am asking you to acknowledge reality. Leo broke the law, endangered this house, and stole from me. What happens next is up to him. He can make full restitution and face civil consequences, or he can face the legal system. But I will not, under any circumstance, pretend this did not happen or cover it up. She stood up abruptly. I need to think about this. I need air. Take all the time you need, Amelia. She walked toward our bedroom, or what was left of it, and I heard the door click shut. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, looking at the blueprint photograph, the measurements I had calculated in my youth, the robust structure I had planned so carefully. You can't build something solid on a broken foundation. The next morning, my colleague, Dr. Thomas Easton, one of the best structural engineers in the region, a man I'd worked with for 3 decades, arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. He spent 2 hours examining the damage, taking precise measurements and running quick calculations on his tablet. When he finished, his face was grim. Bernard, this is bad. The roof load is being fully distributed through that primary wall section, exactly as you suspected. Without the full support, you're looking at potential catastrophic collapse within weeks, possibly days, once the first significant snow load hits. We are heading into late fall. What is the fix, Thomas? You need a custom fabricated steel wide flange I-beam installed immediately, along with proper reinforced steel columns for vertical support. This is an emergency repair. I'm talking about mobilizing my rapid response crew to prioritize your job. Cost, materials, and labor, $12,000 to $15,000 for the structural steel and the engineer's stamp alone. Installation, excavation, and interior finish work, you're looking at $25,000 minimum to bring it up to code. I nodded once. Write it up. I need the full, stamped engineering report for insurance and legal purposes. You're suing someone over this? My stepson, Thomas. My stepson did this. He didn't comment, maintaining professional courtesy, but his eyebrows told the story. The municipal building inspector arrived an hour later. He was a younger man, but he recognized quality construction. He took one look at the exposed, load-bearing wall and whistled, low and long. Who did this work, Mr. Stratton? Was this a DIY project? Unlicensed contractors, hired by someone who does not own the property, without my consent. He pulled out his official tablet and started documenting everything. This is a red tag situation. Severe, high-priority safety hazard. No one can occupy this structure until the steel support is fully installed and the structural integrity is verified by a stamped engineer's report and a final city inspection. I am red tagging the property immediately. Excuse me, I have to leave my home. Load-bearing wall partially demolished without permit. without engineering, without proper reinforcement. This is an immediate hazard to human life. You need to vacate the premises today. Once the repairs are completed and an engineer signs off, you can reoccupy. He handed me the official laminated notice. I read it twice, the cold, stark language of bureaucracy cementing the reality of Leo's stupidity in my mind. Amelia came out, saw the inspector, and then saw the bright, inescapable red tag affixed to the front door. Bernard, what is happening? The house is condemned. The house is unsafe. We cannot legally stay here until the structure is repaired and passes inspection. We are being legally evicted by the municipality. What? Where are we supposed to go? I have work. I'll stay at my cabin on Lake Superior. It has heat and running water. You can stay wherever you want, Amelia. This is absolutely insane, Bernard. You're going to let the city do this to us. The inspector left. Thomas left. I quietly packed a bag, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and all the important financial and legal documents. Amelia stood in the kitchen, looking utterly lost. Bernard, we need to resolve this before it goes to court. We will talk after the emergency repairs are done and paid for. I need to coordinate Thomas's contractors, deal with the insurance company, and file a formal police report. I do not have time right now to debate whether Leo, your 30-year-old son, should face consequences for his criminal actions. He is my son, and this is my home. It is my house. The house I can no longer legally live in now because of your son. I walked out and drove the 6-hour journey to the cabin. It was cold. I hadn't fully winterized it, but it was structurally sound and peaceful. I'd stayed in worse conditions on job sites. I spent the next 4 days coordinating the emergency repairs. Thomas's contractors worked around the clock. The custom steel beam alone cost $18,000. Installation and additional reinforcement required by the city inspector cost another $20,000. The total cost to restore the structural integrity and satisfy the city was $38,450. Added to the $21,580 Leo had charged to my credit card, the total financial damage was exactly $60,030. The credit card company eventually reversed Leo's charges after their internal investigation concluded it was unauthorized familial fraud. The police took my detailed statement, the structural report, and issued a formal warrant for Leo's arrest on charges of fraud and criminal property damage. Mark filed the restraining order, and it was granted. Leo was legally prohibited from coming within 100 meters of my property. Amelia called me every day. First she was angry, then she was pleading, and finally she was desperate. Bernard, please drop the charges. He's terrified. He's sleeping on Chris's sofa. He should be terrified. He stole over $21,000 and caused a $38,000 mistake that left me legally homeless for 4 days. I will make sure he pays you back. I will start deducting from my savings. With what money, Amelia? Be specific. What kind of job will he hold for 5 years to pay off a $60,000 debt? She couldn't answer that. On day 5, the repairs were completed. Thomas signed off. The building inspector removed the red tag. I drove back home. Amelia was there, sitting quietly in the living room, looking small. We need to talk, she said. I sat down, deliberately putting my briefcase on the table, displaying the thick stack of engineering reports and legal documents. Okay, I've thought about this a lot, Bernard, and I understand you're angry. I understand the liability. I'm not angry, Amelia. I'm done. Her face crumpled, finally showing a raw, profound shock. What? I'm done, Amelia. I have spent 8 years watching you enable Leo, watching you consistently prioritize his temporary feelings over our permanent marriage, watching you defend his laziness, his entitlement, his complete lack of responsibility. And now, I've spent $60,000 of my retirement savings fixing the damage he caused because he wanted better lighting for his ephemeral videos. He's my son. What was I supposed to do? Abandon him? Be a parent, not a codependent friend. Teach him accountability. Set boundaries. But you never did. And now, he's facing criminal charges, and you're asking me to fix that too. That is not my responsibility. You could still drop the charges. Why would you do that? Because I'm asking you to. Because I'm your wife. I am begging you. I looked at her, at this woman I had married, thinking she was strong, capable, and share my structured view of life. She was none of those things when it came to Leo. She was enabling, codependent, and completely unwilling to see her son clearly. Amelia, I cannot stay married to someone who prioritizes their adult, criminal son over their husband, over the law, and over our shared financial security. I cannot live with someone who enables someone who has actively damaged my home and stolen from me. Are you asking for a divorce? I'm telling you that I can't do this anymore. You taught Leo the lesson that consequences are optional. I cannot live in that reality. She started crying softly. He's my son, Bernard. I know. And that's why this structural issue, this foundation, will never hold. Amelia moved out the next day. She went to stay with Leo at Chris's apartment. Leo's court date was set for 4 weeks later. Mark, my lawyer, said that with the structural report, the police documentation, and the full reversal of the fraud charges by the credit card company, the case was ironclad. As a first-time felony offense, Leo would likely receive probation and mandatory restitution, but he would absolutely have a criminal record. My daughter, Sarah, called me when she heard the news. Dad, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Don't be sorry, Sarah. I should have done this years ago. You know, he still owes me and the house about $60,000. I know. He borrowed $4,500 from me and never paid it back either. I never told you because I didn't want to cause more problems with Amelia. You can tell me now. We talked for an hour. She said she would fly home for Christmas to the main house for the first time in 4 years. Leo eventually entered a plea of guilty to reduced charges of grand theft and property damage. The judge ordered him to pay full restitution of $60,030 and gave him 3 years of supervised probation. He would be forced to seek and maintain legitimate employment to begin making payments. Chris's parents kicked him out 3 months later when Leo couldn't contribute to the rent. Amelia filed for divorce. I didn't contest it. She received half of the equity we had accumulated together, which was relatively little, as I had owned the house before we married. She talked about buying Leo a small condominium as a fresh start, but I heard through mutual friends that it fell through. Leo ended up renting a tiny, dingy basement apartment in a smaller city. I spent Christmas at the cabin with Sarah and Clara. We fished through the ice. We made hot apple cider. We talked about Margaret, about the old days, and about the future. Sarah looked around the sturdy, quiet space of the cabin one evening. You built this, didn't you, Dad? Took me 3 summers. And the main house? Built that, too. Why do you think Amelia didn't understand that? That these things, that they meant something more than just a roof? Because she saw them as assets, things to be used and consumed. I saw them as legacy, things to be preserved and respected. Are you okay, Dad? I looked out at the frozen lake, at the stars coming out over the pine trees. I lost a marriage, but I kept my self-respect. I kept my home, and I kept my professional integrity. Was it worth it? Every time I look at that new, heavy steel I-beam supporting the roof of my house, I know exactly what it cost to fix someone else's broken sense of reality. Every time I see the blueprints I drew, I remember who built that house. And every time I don't have to enable a 30-year-old man-child, I feel a little bit more free. That's pretty philosophical for a structural engineer. I smiled. I've had a lot of time to think. 8 months later, I sold the large 2-story house. I got an excellent price. I bought a much smaller single-story home closer to the cabin, something I could easily maintain as I got older, something without the heavy memories of Amelia and Leo. Sarah visited more often. Clara asked me to teach her basic carpentry. I showed her how to read a blueprint, how to measure twice and cut once, and how to respect the structure you're working with. Why do you always say that, Grandpa? Respect the structure? Because buildings are like people, Clara. They have definite limits. You have to understand what they can carry and what they can't. Push too hard in the wrong place, and everything comes down. Like when Leo broke the wall. Exactly like that. I heard through mutual friends that Leo's streaming channel never took off. He works at a remote customer service call center now, making slow payments on his restitution debt. Amelia remarried some man she met at her fitness class. I heard he has adult children, too. Maybe she learned something. Maybe not. I don't think about them much anymore. I think about the cabin I built, the steel beam I had to install, the structures that hold, the measurements that matter, and the foundation that supports. I think about Sarah bringing Clara to learn carpentry, about teaching her what my grandfather taught me, about legacy that lasts longer than social media posts. You can't build anything solid on a broken foundation. It took me 68 years and over $60,000 to fully understand and enforce that essential life lesson.